Hello and welcome to the Car Care channel. Hope you guys are doing well. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this Lexus 300h. This is actually, as you can see here, this is a commercial car. It's an Uber Lyft car. It has just over 100,000 miles. We're going to do a full inspection. The owner of the car brought me the car, who's actually a viewer. He wanted to go through the car front to back, make sure everything's looking good, make sure his car is safe for him and his passengers. So we're going to do a full inspection. We're going to lift the car, take the wheels off, look under the hood, look all across the car to do a full safety inspection and report our findings to the owner. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. If you are a returning subscriber, well, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So let's open the hood, let's start our inspection. So one thing I'll say before we get started, anytime you work on cars, you got to take your jewelry off. There's one viewer, Colorado, Boo, who actually told me he had a trip to the ER after his finger got stuck on his wedding ring. So Mrs. Car Care is filming. With your permission, I will take my wedding ring, let's put some gloves, and let's start our inspection. Okay, let's start our inspection. So the first thing is I'm going to look at our brake fluid. It is slightly over max. I'm not too concerned about it. We're going to take a look at the brakes later. At our air filter housing, everything looks secure. Let's check our air filter. Oh, we got a fancy K&N filter, which looks clean. I'm going to put that back. Engine computer, fuse block. One thing about the fuse block you always want to check is how good is the seal. Looks clean inside, dirty outside. That means the seal that is right here is good. That is a common one. If you get water inside of here, it's a disaster. We're going to continue our inspection. I'm looking around the inverter. Make sure there are no coolant leaks, which everything looks good. Moving along, let's pull the engine cover off. Everything is looking good. I usually like to open the oil cap just to see if it looks dark. Got a little bit of blow by, that's normal. Everything looks relatively clean here, so that's good. Continuing on, something common with this engine is people spill oil here, and then it just travels around here and piles up on top of the intake, and then people think they have an oil leak. It's actually not an oil leak, it's just spillage from here. One common spot on this engine is front timing cover leaks. This one is dry, so that's good. Let's look here. I'm going to look at the top of the radiator here. Looks like our coolant level is good. I'm going to take a look at my radiator here, make sure at the top seam. Radiators typically don't leak, in the middle. They typically leak right around the seam at the top. So I'm looking at the plastic seam here. Everything looks dry. Hose looks good. Bypass hose looks good. I don't see any leaks right now. Do see a little bit of wetness on top of the transmission, but that could be from the vent. It is not really a leak, but it's something let's keep a mental memory of that. I'm gonna look here now. There's something common with these. Where the bottom radiator hose comes in, there is that thermostat housing. It's plastic and they are sometimes common to leak, but this one looks pretty dry. It's an electric water pump. One thing we don't have to check on this, there's no drive belt, so we're good there. Here's that inverter coolant. Here are the hoses. We're just gonna take a quick look, make sure nothing's leaking. And that looks good. I'm happy with that. I'm going to look in the back of the engine. It's going to be a little bit harder to see for you, but again, I'm looking for that. So, see, I see that oil that I talked about. Maybe when we lift the car, I'll show you. At some point, and maybe they cleaned it, but at some point there was oil that got spilled here and went all the way back. This is a common stuff you always want to find. Whenever you see oil leaks, find the highest point, because gravity will pull the oil down, never push it up, unless there's pressure pushing it up. So in the back here, we got an AC line. We got our ABS accumulator and pump. This is very similar to a Avalon hybrid or Camry hybrid of this same year. This is, by the way, a 2014 ES300h. One thing that stands out immediately to me as a technician is this, right here. This is an aftermarket. This is an aftermarket strut, because you can see this. This is not something original. I can, just from experience, these nuts are also not original. So that's something we're going to keep a definite mental image of when we go downstairs and check. The cowl is not very clean, but acceptable. Maybe we'll run into the vacuum a little bit because I see some debris there. Having said that, I am liking everything here. I have now an image. One thing we want to look at is oil leaks from the back. Another thing is we're going to want to check those struts. I'm going to remember the transmission, make sure that that little haze around the vent is not an actual oil being pushed out. So having said that, let's check out the body of the car before we move on, because I want to show you a few things on it. This car has a lot of body work, and I noticed that the minute I set eyes on it. If you stand here and I'm looking at the sheen of the paint, I can actually see spots inside the paint. And this is going to be really hard to show you. Let me grab the camera and I'll try to show you. You always want to find, do you see that spot right there? You always want to find the light, not sunlight, and pass it across. Then you'll see that little speck. That's actually underneath the paint, and that's an indication that this is body work. This is typical. And then you go around. I see it all over. I see it here. And then actually there's a spot right here where the clear coat is peeling. And this is actually the blend point. I can see all kinds of body work. It looks like this whole side has body work. It's not an issue, but it's something, as a technician, when you look at a car, that is the first thing you want to look at is what kind of condition this car is in. This car looks like it's been in an accident. It has paint work, maybe not a major accident. Now this is how you start investigating. Let's lift the car up and let's look underneath it and we'll see what we find. All right, guys, so let's take a look here, and right away we know these are aftermarket. I'm looking at them. I don't see any leaks here. I don't see any leaks, so that's good. The sway bars are aftermarket because Toyota or Lexus sway bars, they don't have Zerk fittings, so these are aftermarket. Usually if you grab them from here and you pull down on the sway bar links, you're going to see if they're loose. This one is tight. We're going to grab the bar and move it. Make sure we don't have any play in the bushing. That's good. We're going to check everything. Everything looks like it was done right because there's been work here. It's very common for things to be misrouted and wrong, but everything here looks good. Let's take a look at the brakes. I estimate about 8 millimeters and 8 millimeters, so that looks like even wear. This is an aftermarket rotor because the original rotors, this part will be painted, and you see this one is not painted. It's not an issue, but something to note. Always take note of what you're looking at when you work on cars. We're going to look at our control arm bushing right here. And if you notice on this bushing, there is a little bit of dry rotting on the rubber, but I don't see the bushing tearing up or coming off. So this is normal with age. We're not going to worry about it. Everything is looking good. And we're going to look at the side of the transmission here. I don't see any leaks. Let's look at the other side. I also don't see any leaks. This is not a hydraulic power steering. This is just the electrical, so I'm not expecting any leaks here. So axle looks good. The boots are not leaking. So I'm happy with this side. Let's go look at the back side. Aftermarket strut as well. I can read it. KYB quick strut. I don't see any leaks. Everything looks good here. Same thing with the sway bar link. It's aftermarket because we got that Zerk fitting. So let's grab the arm. I don't see any movement. Here's that bushing for that sway bar link. I don't see any movement in it. The wire is routed right. The brake hose is routed right as well. Here is that brake line. This is something that you want to inspect on these, because if you see, the coating comes here and it stops right here, and this is actually exposed brake line. So you always want to check these for rust. This one looks very good. If you live in the Chicago area, if you don't, you're good. Now, one thing that is common with these, and folks, I skipped over this part. I did check the wheels for play, up, down. It didn't have any, so we're good. But this model is common for this bushing right here to get loose and makes all kinds of noise. This bushing right here for this arm. I'm moving it, I don't feel anything, although these are really hard to feel, like movement-wise, but they'll make noise. But here is the problem with this car. And this is what we're going to talk about right now, because I'm already not happy. This customer actually brought me this car because they wanted the rear brakes replaced. I already have the rotors, have the pads. We were gonna do a brake job. But just glancing over these brakes, they're not even close. Let's take the caliper off and let's really take a close look, and then we'll go look on the other side as well. Well, would you look here? If you're not mechanically inclined, these brakes are not even close. I mean, this is easily 7 millimeters. You see them right here. That's not even close to needing replacement. This pad is a little not moving freely. This one seems better, but that doesn't need brake replacement. I don't see any issues. Our pins move freely. So let's go look at the other side. Maybe the other side is seized, and that's why they told him he needs brakes. Before we do the brake inspection, let's look again. We got another not so beautiful KYB quick strut. It's not leaking, everything looking good. Sway bar link is also aftermarket. Bushing is good. Everything is looking relatively okay here. Okay, let's take this caliper off and let's take a look at what's going on here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is another case. There is a slight abnormal wear here. So this pad looks a little bit thinner than this one, but we're not even close. I think if we clean these, make sure they move freely, these brakes could last another really long time. I don't want to put an exact time on it. This pin is moving. This pin is also moving. I don't think this car needs brakes. If anything, we could just clean up the pad holders a little bit and life is good. This is a scenario where technicians need to make a moral decision. This customer came in, replaced my brakes. Well, the brakes don't need replacement. Some technicians, unfortunately, will just say, well, he wants the brakes replaced. I'm just going to replace the brakes and that's his problem. No, that's not right, because it could have been a bad mechanic that didn't see them right and told them, hey, you need brakes. And now this customer is spending a small fortune, especially in the case of this car. It's an Uber car. This guy makes a living driving this car. Spending a lot of money on brakes, not really a good thing he wants to be doing. So I'm going to consult with the owner. We're going to talk about it, and most likely I'm going to end up just cleaning these a little bit, and we're going to call it a day. We're not going to replace the brakes here. Okay, so now we're going to take an inspection underneath the car. And let me grab the camera, let me bring you here so we can take a look together. So here is that oil leak that we talked about. That is actually not an oil leak. That is just dripping from filling the car from a sloppy oil change, basically. There's your PCV valve, looks original. I don't see anything that stands out here. There are no oil leaks. Here's that oil filter. It's a little wet, looks like recent oil change, but nothing is actively leaking. Look at the front. Let's look at our bottom of the radiator. I don't see any coolant crust. That means we don't have any leaks here. Here is the transmission. I don't see, and again, any leaks. That little haze that I saw at the top is not an active leak, so we're not worried about it. The owner wants me to replace the transmission fluid on this. So that's something we're gonna do later on. But I'm trying to look at everything, make sure we don't miss anything here. Everything is looking good. I'm not too worried. Here's your sway bar. The exhaust is intact. One thing on the exhaust I noticed, looks like at some point there was like a garbage bag or something stuck on the exhaust. That probably he knows about it because it probably smells a lot. By the way, if you're doing, I have a video on the hybrid transmission replacement. Here's the drain plug, and here's the fill plug right there. 2 sensor. Axle is good on here. I don't see anything. Axle seals are not leaking. Now we're going to do our general look around underneath the car. I don't see anything standing out here. We'll go do the same in the back, but the exhaust looks okay. No heat shields are rattling. That's something you always want to just give them the tug test. Here is that AC drain. Looks clear. We'll double check it later. But I don't see anything standing out at this point. I am pretty happy with this car, and being a Lexus, being on the street, used commercially, this is in excellent shape. You cannot have one that is in better shape. There's 0 leaks at 100,000 miles of, this is not 100,000 miles of me and you driving on the highway getting to work. There's 100,000 miles of very heavy duty use, and everything looks beautiful. Let's go check out the back real quick. All right, let's start our inspection in the back. Muffler is original, and would you go figure, Toyota on a Lexus. Of course, it is a Toyota after all. Our charcoal canister is right there. Kind of hard to see. I don't see anything hit, or actually the subframe protects it, but we're still gonna look in case. There's your level sensors for the headlights. Everything is looking good here. I don't see anything standing out. We're gonna take a look at this side. We already checked the suspension. We're just looking for anything that got hit. Here's your fuel tanks, well protected, so I'm not too worried about it. Heat shield, again, always give your heat shields a rattle. And this style heat shield always will move a little bit like that because they changed the bolts to plastic. I hope you can see them here well. They're plastic clips that hold it. It used to be bolts, and they used to corrode, and the shield falls. So this shield will always have a little bit of movement, make this noise, but actually won't make noise. That's how they all are. And we'll look all the way at the back. Everything looking good. I don't see anything staying. Here's your tow hook. I don't see anything, even rust levels. I mean, this car is not coated, undercoated, but it barely has any rust on the body. It's actually doing very well, and this is something typical with these Uber cars, because they're always driven, they're always washed. The salt never really gets a chance to settle down and start eating away at the car. Actually, overall, this car is in great shape. Let's go check a few more things. Just for curiosity, let's take a look at how the interior looks on this Lexus. Well, it's of course a beautiful Lexus interior, and actually the seats look like they're not worn down. The steering wheel, I mean, the owner of this car really takes care of it, and it shows, but the seats are not worn down. But being an Uber car, we're actually gonna look at the back seat. That's where it gets the most use. Let's look at this back seat. Do not slam the door. There is a sign there. Well, let's take a look. Oh wow, this thing is in great shape. I mean, this leather really holds up well to heavy, heavy use. It's not even covered. It does have a few cracks here and there, but I mean, this is an Uber car. Hundreds and hundreds of people sit here, and it's still in great shape. Headliner looks clean, looks good. This car is in really good shape, other than the accidents that it had, which, of course, being on the road as much as it is, not too bad. Not too bad. This is really in good shape. Let's look at the trunk. This is extremely clean, folks. And of course, being a hybrid, you can tell the whole thing is taken down by, here's that fan. Take a look at it real quick. But this is in excellent shape right here. Batteries right here. Let's actually take a look at it. I'll test it later. It's Panasonic battery. These usually last a really long time, but this one will give it a test later to see how it looks. Folks, I just got off the phone with the owner and I am a little saddened by this because I thought perhaps he was looking through his wheels, thought the brakes were low. Maybe sometimes you can't really see those from far away, but no, a shop that did the last oil change told him, you have 1 month left on the brakes. Did you mean 1 month or 1 year? You can never, the standard golden rule of automotive business, you never estimate how long the brakes will last. Because you know what? If I have a heavy foot and I drive very fast and brake very hard, the brakes will last a lot longer than someone who is a lot more conservative driving. They don't brake as hard. They don't, they drive all highway. You can never estimate, oh, your brakes will last a month. You can't do that to people. This is just not right, and this is what boils my blood. As an auto technician, when people do this, this customer, all these parts were like $200 bucks in pads and rotors, plus my labor. We're talking, you're reaching almost $300. This is an Uber driver. This is a commercial car. You cannot be spending $200-300 throwing it around here and there. That could be your day's worth of profits. That's not right. And this is what bothers me about the automotive industry. And this is why I encourage you, you need to find a trusted mechanic. A mechanic that will come out and tell you, this is exactly what's going on, and this is what your car needs. Not, I think you need this, and you have a month. You never put a time. And that would be a big red flag. I really dislike this. Now, a few other things that we're going to be doing in this car. The owner wanted to replace the brake fluid. I told him we'll test it. He said it's never been replaced. I don't see a history of it. I just want it replaced. That's fine, as long as you understand. I did not test it. You want it done. Other thing they want to do is the transmission fluid. Again, they're not sure if it's ever been replaced. We're just going to go ahead and replace it. That's what he wanted to do. Perfectly fine. He also wanted the front rear brakes replaced. We're not doing that. I'm going to take these pads, give everything a good clean, put it back together, and off we go. It could last a week, could last a month, could last a year. I don't know. Every oil change, you inspect the brakes. That's why inspections are important. Another thing that he had an issue with, which we're going to take a quick look at right now. So his headlights are really dim, and these are HID headlights. He brought some aftermarket bulbs. These bulbs are done. I told him, this is how you approach your customers. This is how, when you're dealing, if you're not working in your own car and you're watching this video, mechanics need to give you the options and you select from them. They need to inform you, because in the end, this is not my car. If it was my car, I make the decision however I want. But you let people make the decisions. You just give them all the options. I told him, look, your HID headlights are dim. They're a little bit low on power. They just don't feel right. We're going to replace the bulb and see what happens, because it's either going to be a bulb or a ballast. And unfortunately, because it's both sides, I can't really swap ballasts to see what happens. But I have a feeling it is a bulb. Now, I did not tell him this, but I have a feeling it's a bulb because both bulbs are the same age. And usually ballast, not both of them will fail at the same time. So let's go ahead and pop this cover off. And actually, this is somewhat easy on this Lexus. I'm just going to pop this. And should be a clip. Right. See, 2 clips. Now here's one thing with HID bulbs. Do you see how the middle of this bulb looks all cloudy and like swollen is the term they also use? That's usually not a good sign for this D4S bulbs. So he's got some aftermarket bulbs. They're probably not the best, but remember, these bulbs are $150 each. That's actually a good price because MSRP I think is $175. Let's go pop the bulb in and we'll compare side to side and see if this is going to fix this issue. So here are the bulbs that he bought online, and I am not making this up. I think somebody's been copying somebody. Not counterfeit, because they just copied the design, but they actually do say their name here. By the way, this is a box from an original. This is the same design of an original Toyota Lexus parts box, but whatever works for this company. And they're very difficult box to open. So I'm trying to make sure I don't touch the bulb. One thing with these bulbs is you never want to touch the filament. But if you look at this one is actually not swollen. And this one is like cloudy and swollen. The cloudiness not so much, but the swollen, it's really hard to see it on camera, but I can see it here that this middle part looks bigger than this one. So that doesn't mean anything. Let's install this bulb and see what happens. Put this on. Okay. Let me turn on the bulbs and we'll see how they look. Well, let's see how these bulbs look like. Well, I can already tell that the color is massively different. This is more like a lot more blue, and this side is like very dim. Now, the owner did tell me that he wanted a more blue, brighter color, and actually it's starting to, you can definitely tell that this is a lot brighter than this one. This one is like barely lit, and this one is extremely bright. So I think in this case, we're gonna call this a success. I'll go ahead and replace the other side and we should be good. I think the ballasts are fine. All right, folks, so the lights are fixed and we're good. I just spoke with the customer again, and we're gonna go ahead and do what he wanted to do, except the brakes. I'm just gonna clean them up real good. The bulbs are taken care of. Another thing that I'm gonna do to this car, and the hybrid fan filter, he doesn't have one, and this model should have one, but we're gonna take the fan out real quick, clean it up, at least look at it, clean it if needed, and then put it back together. The other thing that he wants to do is, this is actually the seal for the sunroof, and they're kind of a pain to install. This model is notorious for a rattle from the sunroof. When the sunroof is closed, it just rattles over pumps. Now, there are two things, and this is a situation where when you're dealing with a mechanic that knows their products, and you gotta come forward and tell them the whole picture. You can't just, oh yeah, we'll do what you want and that's it. Because I'm not in the business of making owners happy. I am in the business of fixing their cars so they're safe and they don't have issues. But I did tell him, you know, this is a common issue where the seal gets loose and now the glass rattles. But I told him there's also a common issue with the structure itself making noise. So I can throw the seal, he already bought it. I can throw it on and see what happens, but just be warned that if I put the seal and it doesn't fix it, you're gonna need potentially to take the headliner down and see the structure. Sometimes we tighten it, move it, sometimes it's actually the roof panel that makes noise, and we go from there. Can't really predict the future, but we can start with the cheapest part first and then the big part next if it really bothers you. Although if it was my car, I wouldn't fix it. But again, key thing, it's not my car. I can't decide for the customer. Folks, the final report on this car, driving a Lexus for Uber and Lyft is actually not an expensive endeavor. For all intents and purposes, once I go underneath this car, it is exactly as an Avalon or a Camry hybrid. I don't see any difference. Maybe the fancy engine cover says Lexus on it, but I don't see it as a completely different car. This is exactly the same. The cost of maintenance on this is the same. We got all these parts, or at least most of them, from the Toyota dealership where I work, because most of the maintenance parts, they're the same and they cross over. Really disappointed that a mechanic told him he needs brakes, but what are you gonna do? This is why you gotta find your trusted mechanic. Once you find them, stick to them and you won't have issues. Actually, I also ran a computer scan, make sure we have no codes, nothing that I was expecting. Everything looks good. I'm not worried about this car and life is good. I hope this video is helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.